know, why did you choose to go abroad versus, you know, staying here?
Do you mind if we expand that to a domestic internship rather than just a tech?
Yeah, just domestic internship.
Part of it, again, I was saying flexibility when it comes to the workplace as an individual. When you're here in the States, there's an additional level of comfort that comes from working with your own culture. There are certain things that are predictable. When you go abroad, you lose all of that base support. And by base support, friends, family, culture, sometimes language, sometimes knowing how to get around, and that's an additional level of learning that has to happen. I wouldn't be who I am as an individual without having gone abroad, because it makes you much more tolerant, much more able to adjust to sudden shifts in the workplace. Such as, like, I came back and my job here, the entire organization had gone an entire reorganization while I'd been gone for the summer. And part of that is just being, instead of like going off the rails about how like terrible this reorganization is, and or like how much pressure it's putting on you, you're just kind of like, okay, and move on. So it's also about like being able to work across culture with other people and knowing what your limits are as far as, am I accidentally offending somebody, and how can I pull that back and repair that rift? And knowing when I have to like be a bit more submissive because of the different culture in order to show additional respect.
Yeah, it's my impression that I have more opportunities as a student to get international positions, because at least in Germany, their system for archival, their master is different. So they look at you and they say, what is this degree that you have? We don't actually know where you fit in. And if I graduated, I would say, you know, or when I graduate, I only have so many skills, and I don't think they would be as likely to take me on as a new fresh professional. Whereas when I'm a student, they have this perception of, well, we're teaching you something, and we also don't have to pay you necessarily, depending on the internship. So they're more likely to take you on. And so I felt like now was the time to do it.
So I actually went to several talks during winter semester last year that really reinforced my idea of why I needed to travel. One of them was, how many of you have seen Hotel Rwanda? I can never pronounce his last name, but Paul Rusinga. Thank you. I'm terrible with names. Was here speaking at the University of Michigan. And he really talked about the need for everyone to feel like they were part of a world community, and that what happened in another country should have just as strong of an impact on you as it does on the people that live there, because you're part of this larger community. And so between that and then Tony Shapstick, who came and gave a penny stamps lecture talk about innovation in South Africa, and how what they were creating there and how they were solving the problems there really worked for South Africa, because when you tried to import the solutions from Silicon Valley into South Africa, they didn't work, because the people in Silicon Valley had very different problems and didn't understand how the problems existed within the culture and the situation there. And I thought that was really interesting. And as a user experience designer, or someone who wants to go and become a user experience designer, how is it that you can create solutions to problems that people have if you're not living and existing in a situation where problems exist again? How can you say to someone, well, this is the solution I have for you 5,000 miles away? And so I was interested in exploring, like, okay, well, how can I put myself in that situation, and how can I learn more? Because as a user experience designer, your job is to design experiences for everyone, which means you need to have a really broad background in absolutely everything. Because if you can only speak to your experiences, that really limits what you're able to do.
Yeah, building off of that, it's when you're suddenly in a very different situation and you don't have the support of your family and friends and even your school in many cases, it really forces you to learn a lot about yourself and deeply rooted tendencies you have, and in some cases prejudices you have, or assumptions that you have, things that you never think about when you're here, things that you totally take for granted. Suddenly you're in a situation where people are acting very differently than you're used to, and you realize that you have, just like a visceral reaction to something that sometimes you don't expect, and you realize, like, wow, I didn't realize that I thought this way about this certain thing, or I didn't realize I felt this way about this certain thing. So it really forces you to face those types of situations and work through that, and it really helps you as a professional because you can really think more broadly about designing. If you're a user experience designer, for example, just about totally different types of users, and you can think in a way that you just never could have otherwise.
I'm actually going to talk about that tonight, and also I think maybe that's awesome. You want to hear more about that?
Well, for me, it helped me get a better idea of what was happening technically for digital standards in the archives community. Yes, I went there for this particular program, Doc Explore, but then I also got to see what their standards were for file formats at the specific organization. I'm in economics and sustainability of a digital preservation program class right now, and we talk a lot about looking at what other cultural organizations in different countries are doing for digital preservation. So and it's actually very, very different depending on a country by country basis. And the internship gave me a little bit more of an insight to maybe this one cathedral organization doesn't have a particular metadata schema for all of their images as somewhere more knowledgeable, like where Sophia was at. They probably had a more rigorous adherence to metadata standards. So I kind of was bridging some knowledge gaps between those areas.
I think for me, this is really interesting. The amount of networking I was able to do with other organizations, I wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to at University of Michigan. So like, I made connections with ICP International, which is like a nonprofit software corporation. I made connections with Heifer International. I made just all of these different organizations that were there because my organization was so well established and we're trying to make connections. But these aren't people I would have met had I gone through a domestic internship or had I primarily stuck around Harvard.
To go up, being abroad will challenge the way you think and the way you approach your profession. So while I was there, I interviewed with the archivist for the university. I also attended a panel on the Slave Routes Project, which is a collaboration with UNESCO and a lot of cultural heritage institutions throughout West Africa trying to trace every soul who came over the Middle Passage and to try to find all of the sites that have, since disappeared from the archival record, and, what does that mean? And so hearing African scholars talk about African history really did challenge the way that I think about archives and the way that I think about appraisal and the way that I think about what I choose to keep in the archive means for the communities, the silences that it reinforces, and the surprising ways to break those silences and the ways that they can be used and the way to work with other professionals outside of the archival professional in order to make those silences less heard. And as someone who's interested in social justice and someone who's interested in using archives so using archives to shed light on communities that have otherwise been erased was really, really interesting for me, not to hear it just from David Wallace or just from Paul Conway or my own, but to hear people whose communities have been impacted by that silence talk about the influence that continues to have on their society, that continues to have on how they approach scholarship, and how we work around that. Question?
Well, I was wondering for those students who are interested in careers abroad, did you find this internship opportunity also a moment that would enable or might have enabled you to create connections for future job abroad?
We got job offers, all three of us, at my internship. Edgar and Christian were both second years. They opted not to take it.
In India, in
Delhi, or no?
In Delhi, yep, the organization we worked with. But beyond that, I mean, not only did we get to work really closely with the CEO of this organization, who is very well known in the international development field, and he has a lot of connections. He used to work at Microsoft and he still has very close ties with them. We met a lot of people through him, and we also networked a lot with his wife, actually, who had just moved to Delhi, and she was starting a new company. And I'm positive if we would have approached her and said, we want to work with you, she wouldn't have taken any one of us on. And just, especially going through SI, they set up several different presentations and meetings when we were all together as a group, where we went to Microsoft Research in Bangalore, and we met a bunch of people who worked there in research and in tech. We went to Infosys, which is a huge corporation in India, and they told us all about their internship programs and jobs they offer. And we met the people directly, and they said, if you want to work here, email me directly, and we'll get you set up, basically. So, definitely.
They said they would hire me if they could. And if I would ever wanted to come back to Ghana, talk to them. I was actually chatting with some of my colleagues on Facebook yesterday. And I think just continuing to go abroad, especially if you've been abroad before, shows to future opportunities a commitment to wanting to be a global citizen and wanting to be a global professional. So even if it's not just the networks you're making, it's also, oh, you're very engaged with this and clearly very passionate about it, and you're not just, oh, I'm going to go work abroad.
Yeah, I also felt like I did make some contacts. I didn't leave, then they said, we'll offer you a job. There's so little funding, I don't think that would have been really a possibility. But I do feel comfortable emailing any of the people that I worked with, asking them if they know of any positions opening. I also made friends with a couple of other German master students, so as they proceed with their education and then to their professional careers, I feel like I've made a really nice network with them as well. So yeah, I think, and then also you get a nice resume, or not a resume, but you get a letter of recommendation after a job usually, and so I have a nice one of those. So what's nice is that's their system for when you want to get a job, you have these letters that people have already written for you. And so now I have this very official letter that I can give to another archive and say, look what I did here.
Absolutely, they didn't want me to leave. And I got job offers from Hanson as well. They're like, we have all these different satellite companies, like if there's anywhere you want to work in the world, we can set you up somewhere.
Yes.
Did you guys do intensive programming, or was it like with what the School of Information uses?
I didn't do intensive programming. I worked with DSpace so that the XML was already set up, so I was just inputting data. Now Henry, who is the head of e-resources, probably would have loved to, but they didn't. The projects they needed me to be on and I would have been most effective on did not require the more intensive programming. Also, I need the courses I'm taking now in order to do it.
We just did UX design. We didn't actually do any programming. We built a prototype in Azure, but we didn't. They just had, the organization we work with had a very highly capable tech team, so we interfaced with them very regularly. And they, when we first got there, they were so skeptical. They were, what's UX? Why are you guys always sitting in this room drawing on the board and discussing? But by the end, they were coming to us saying, we have this problem, like how do we approach this? So.
But some of the other GIEP projects are very technically intense and are very much programming projects.
So for mine, because there wasn't a lot of technical backgrounds for the individuals there, I had to be really careful with my scoping, so I could have done a lot more heavy-duty programming than I did, but because I realized that whenever I left there, they had to be able to sustain, it didn't make sense to do a lot of hard coding, so I did a lot of technical work instead.
Any programming?
I worked with the cathedral's IT department to kind of do some of the programming things that I was having trouble with the software. The software platform was made free and publicly available when I was working there. I met people from the Université de Rouen and people from the University of Kent that designed the Document Explorer. and they were no longer taking care of it because it was no longer funded. So I worked with the cathedral's IT department to kind of fix some of the bugs that I was experiencing as I was using it. So.
Any final questions? Oh, right. Yeah.
Well, okay. I was wondering, like, Sophia, you mentioned that you thought they would take you on because you're a student and not just a professional. Some of you started this really early in your MSI career. How did you present your skills? You hadn't even taken a lot of classes that you've taken out to athletes.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that I just said, like, I have an interest in this, and I have beginner's knowledge in that. And because I had this kind of, what was actually kind of unique skill set, because that's not actually the focus, they're not as tech focused in Germany in their archives programs or their history programs, that made me stand out a little bit. And so that ended up helping. And I think it was maybe the way I formulated the cover letter that I wrote. It just sounded like I found it fascinating, which I did. I do find it fascinating. So I think it was more of the interest, my interest level, that got me the position, not the skill set.
Also, you go to University of Michigan, which is a really well-known university throughout the entire world. So people, I mean, as whatever as it sounds, like if you tell people you go here, like this is a world-class university, they're going to expect that whatever classes you do take are going to be the best of the best. So they're going to expect you to come in with a really solid set of skills, even if you've only been here for a year.
Also, you know what you're doing in your part-time job. You know what classes you're going to be taking and what classes you are taking. The syllabi are online. So you can, and also if you're doing ASB, you're going to know what your project is.
Coming in with a project idea is really helpful as well.
So you can kind of assume what skills you're going to have, especially with part-time job stuff, and be like, you know, I will have this if they ask.
See, in my instance, I didn't know what I was going to be doing, so I had to make everything that I wrote would be so broad. I was just hoping that it was a kind of a catch-all for any given article. Yeah, so I didn't actually have that, like, ability to be like, oh yeah, I know a lot about digital preservation.
And I think honestly, as interns, they expect that you're going to have a little bit of knowledge, but you're also there to grow. But they're also really invested in, because you're bringing fresh ideas into the organization. So I think they're less worried about like technical skills, and more what other kind of ideas and kind of thought processes that are different from what their institutions used to that you bring in.
Well, we are out of time, so I want to thank everybody for coming. You didn't sign in. Please sign in. Right here. And I don't know if you guys have to run or not, but if you will have individual questions for the panelists, please feel free to come up here and grab them. But thank you all, and thank you all for sharing. So.